Well, everybody, I'm super thrilled today because today we're going to talk about one of a flower that almost everybody loves, and that is sweet peas. And my guest today really loves sweet peas, and that is Marryn Mathis of the Farmhouse Flower Farm. And you're in Stanwood, Washington, right?
Yes.
So,
Stanwood, Washington.
welcome to the Flower Podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's so fun to finally meet you in person.
Yeah. Well, of course, when we planned all this, I don't know. I mean, I didn't really know when, but it just so happens you have a book coming out for next year, and it's all about sweet peas. So we're going to get to that because we've got to talk about sweet peas since you're on the podcast, especially. But we always have our first question, which is, how did you find your way into the world of flowers?
I like to say that the flowers kind of found me, to be quite honest with you. So a little bit of background for me. I worked at a local healthcare clinic for 21 years and just right out of high school. And I actually did interface coding, believe it or not. And I loved who I worked with, but I didn't love what I did. And I
Mm.
sat in a cubicle all day and I just felt like, is this all there is? And so when my youngest son was born, we just kind of had the opportunity to do a complete reset. And I left corporate America and decided to be a stay-at-home mom. And it happened really quickly, but I discovered flower farming and I just knew from the get-go that that was what I wanted to do. And here we are 7 years later.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
I just before we started, I think I shared with you that, well, I shared with you that I didn't realize that you live not very far from Brent Estrada, and I was like
Yeah.
amazed at that. And I didn't know that you worked at Floret too. So how did that all work out?
Well, so I met Brenna through a wreath workshop giveaway that I was giving away on my Instagram, and she was the winner. And so we met at that workshop for the first time. And then a few months later, we actually started working together at Floret, and kind of the rest is history. So
Wow.
sweet peas and pansies.
Two perfect flowers for each other, that's for sure. So, okay, so tell us about what you grow, kind of your business model, not, who do you sell your flowers to, or do you, or are you just into producing sweet peas?
Well, so we grow 8,000 dahlias. This year we grew 32,000 sweet peas, and we grow other annual flowers, but we mainly grow for seed. So when I started flower farming, I wanted to do CSAs, I want to do farmers markets, I want to do weddings and have our farm stand open. And I actually don't do any of those things now. I want to get more flowers. I know that sounds really weird from coming from a flower farmer, but I want to get more flowers out into our community. It's just the way that things have gone for us personally and what's best for our family is growing for seed. And we found as we've grown and as our business has evolved that people want the seeds. They want to grow these things in their own gardens. And I think COVID really kicked that off too. Like a lot of
Sure.
people just really are wanting get their hands dirty, right? And so we just there was a huge demand for seeds, and so that's just kind of where we did pivoting, and we just decided, weddings didn't really fit our family. Just because there's so many days that are dedicated to harvesting and designing and then installing and all of those kinds of things. And so, but I found so much joy in being able to share what we're producing here on the farm with so many gardeners and growers all over the United States, and also just the energy that I've got from teaching our classes as well. That's been a real surprise to me along the way as well. So it's been really fun just to see where this journey in flowers has taken us.
So when you started your business, and you said it was 8 years ago, roughly?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
Seven.
7 years ago. So when you started your business back then, um, did you start? I know you didn't start necessarily with this in mind, but what were you growing then? I'm kind of curious because a lot of people start growing things, and then as they mature in their knowledge and they grow in their knowledge. They
Mhm.
change the recipe of what they do to kind of streamline things or to add more things. Or, and I'm just curious, kind of what that process was like from where you began to how you got here now.
So naturally, sweet peas were the first flowers that I grew. I remember tucking those seeds into the dirt, as a new flower farmer, just so excited. It felt like it was a full circle moment from my childhood. But my first season, I wanted to grow all the things. So it was anything I could get my hands on. It was dahlias, it was amaranth, calendula, bachelor buttons. I mean, just everything I could possibly get my hands on. And just as the second year, I was like, okay, well, I didn't really care for that. That didn't really sell all that well. I just kind of used my first season just as a learning experience. And then my second season, we quadrupled the sweet pea patch
Wow.
and we grew even more dahlias. And I just really paid attention to what the customers were looking for at that time. What flowers were really selling well, what, bouquets people were really gravitating towards, and just really, fine tuned it a little bit more.
Sure.
And then after our second season is when we got this farm. So our first 2 seasons of flower farming, we were actually on Camano Island, not too far from Brenna, actually. And then now we're on our farm here in Stanwood, on our 10-acre farm. So with more space and more land and, more experience, and we've just kind of grown a little bit every year.
Well, it's funny because even this morning I was having a conversation with one of our flower farmers that bring us product, and we were talking about what to grow, what not to grow, and things like that. I'm curious, do you remember any of those things that you called out, like after that first year, like, I am not doing that again? Because, I'm trying to save somebody else that dime and time and everything else. So who did you kick to the curb first?
Oh, I don't want to
It's all good.
offend
We're all
people, but
flower friends here.
okay. Calendula. Sorry, I kind of kicked that one to it was sticky and I didn't like the texture. Bachelor buttons, they took forever to harvest. And they were
I've heard that.
beautiful, beautiful, but they took forever to harvest. So those were the two things that I remember from my first season that I was like, nope, and I haven't grown them since.
That's funny. I've heard that. That's the biggest complaint I've heard about bachelor buttons is the time to harvest process. It's just because there's a million little stems and cut stage and
Oh,
everything.
there's so many flowers and they're just so beautiful. Like if you're growing them in, a wildflower garden, that's great. That would be a fantastic option. But for cut flowers for time, oh, I remember one bucket of bachelor buttons took me hours, hours to harvest. So yeah,
Yeah.
I was like, no more bachelor buttons.
Yeah, there's got to be a secret there. We need to get somebody on the podcast that knows how to do this, because there's got
Yeah,
to be a
who's the
secret.
bachelor button expert?
I don't know, but I'm sure they're coming out with a book soon, so we'll figure that out. But anyway, but calendula, I'm glad you mentioned that because I kind of have this love hate with calendula. Like I like the flower, and they've come out with some new
Yeah.
colors, but I think it's so hard to get some stem length on them sometimes. And cutting them at the right stage, or are they open? Are they too open? All of that, and I'd have kicked it to the curb
Well,
too.
my first season, I mean, I was just learning everything and
Yeah,
I had my timing completely off. So they were the first flower to bloom. And I was so excited to finally have, flowers, but they were short and they were sticky. And they were a fall color and it was,
right.
going right into summer. And I was like, no, I don't know if these are for me. So I think for fall, they're great, especially, Bronze Beauty. That's a wonderful variety for fall. But yeah, like you said, the stem length is, it's hard to get a decent stem length on it. And just the texture, I couldn't get past that. But they're
Yeah.
such great seed producers. So that's that's another thing. It's like, so
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
I agree though. It's
sorry.
like I wish they would bloom about 2 months later or 3 months later than they do. At least down here, because
Yeah.
I don't know if they even make it through the heat here down here, but Well, one of the things that obviously your corner of our country is known for is sweet peas and dahlias. Those are two great, wonderful things. I walk us through this because I'm going to confess that I tried growing sweet peas once, and it was a train wreck. And obviously, your course wasn't out yet, and so it's been a minute. And yeah, it was a train wreck. Now I've heard of other people trying to grow varieties in the South that do well, but I kind of like to talk about because I know everything's a little different depending on what zone you're in.
Yes.
So can we talk?
It's
Let's
so
unpack
different.
sweet peas.
So I think the number one mistake that people make, in growing sweet peas is they grow the wrong varieties for their climate. The timing is off. They start them too warm, and they don't give them enough light. And those four things will either make you or break you with sweet peas. So for those that are in the South where you guys get really warm really quickly and you need to fall sow your sweet peas, I
Right.
always recommend people to grow the early flowering varieties, because they only take 10 to 11 hours of sunlight per day to induce the bloom cycle, where your regular standard Spencers, those are the ones that everybody really gravitates towards, right? The Spencer varieties, those take, I would say, about 90% of the sweet pea market are Spencer varieties. But those take 12 hours of sunlight to induce the bloom cycle. So you can see where the timing, if
Yeah.
you're needing to, kind of beat Mother Nature at her own game, if you can fall sow and in tandem with that, grow the early flowering varieties, you'll have much better success with your sweet peas.
Well, that's fascinating. I didn't even know that. I've got to, may have to try them again. You may coach
You're
me
gonna
off
have
the
to try them,
wagon.
Scott.
So okay,
I'll
so
help you.
then
I'll walk you through it.
okay, I appreciate that. I'm gonna need some hand holding. So when you plant sweet peas, do you direct sow? I see some people who start them indoors in pots. I see people, who direct sow them. What's the pros and cons and your preferences?
So for me personally, I don't direct sow. I like to consider my sweet pea patch the high rent district, just because we do grow for seed. So I want every spot by a healthy seedling. And here in the Pacific Northwest, we also get a ton of rain. And
Right.
so I want to be able to control those environments a little bit more, just because sweet pea seeds will rot very easily if, they're given too much moisture and they're too wet. So for me, it's easier for me to grow them and start them. I do two different rounds. I'll fall sow mine. Anything that's being grown in a hoop house over winter, I fall sow. So I have those, and then I start mine in January, and we'll do those in my unheated greenhouse. So sweet peas will germinate between 50 to 55 degrees, and then I grow them cold. So believe it or not, as soon as those little snake heads pop through the dirt, I get them out into, I put them in my unheated greenhouse, and that's where they grow. I've had seedlings that we were down to 16 degrees and they were frozen rock solid. The dirt was frozen, the plants were frozen, they were completely crunchy. And within 2 hours of the sun being up, they were right as rain, and you never would have known.
And
So
how
I
big
think
were
sweet peas
they?
have this. They were about 4 inches tall.
Okay.
Yeah. So sweet peas, I think the flower has a reputation for being, this fragile
Right.
blossom, but the plants themselves are so tough that they can take a frost, they can take a freeze, and when they're grown cold and they're grown correctly, their cell walls are a lot stronger so that they can resist, those viruses and, freezes and stuff like that. So I think that's kind of where I go back to the number one mistake people make is they want to, it's kind of human nature to want to nurture these plant babies, right? But I feel like, the more that, if you start cold, they don't need those warm temperatures. They're not like, tomatoes or amaranth or any other, zinnias, celosia, any of those guys that need heat mats. In fact, one of my favorite stories to tell is my sweet pea school workshop. We were actually talking about heat and how sweet peas don't like the heat. And I see this attendee feverishly typing over in the chat window, and she's like, "Be right back, taking my sweet peas off the heat mat." And yeah, it was great. But she was so thankful that, we had I had saved her from keeping her seedlings too warm. But I think it's human nature to want to, just really nurture these plant babies. But sweet peas themselves, they like it cold, and they are more successful when you grow them cold.
So when you plant them like in your field, so they're not under plastic or cover, when do you plant those out? Are those the seeds you
So
started in January?
so they're out in March. So my goal for me personally is to have all my sweet peas in the ground before our dahlia tuber sale. It's all about timing here on the farm.
I hear it.
So beginning of March, I'm putting my sweet pea plants out. So beginning to mid-March, we're full-time sweet pea planting. And then so our last freeze is usually around April 15th. So yeah, when they're grown cold, I don't have to worry about putting them out there and, them freezing, because, they're used to it.
Okay, so I'm excited about the possibility of this because I don't have, I mean, I have like a cold frame, if you want to call it that I can start them indoors, I can put them out there, then come around March. I mean, because we have the same frost date. Our issue is the heat comes so quick.
Right.
Our frost date's around the 7th here in Nashville. So, or
Oh,
it's
okay.
the first part of April. But the problem is we could be 90 degrees 5 weeks later, which is not the
Right.
friend of the sweet pea. So, so
No.
that's the reason why I'm trying. That's why I was starting to think if I could plant them out even earlier because they can handle the cold, then maybe that's what I'll try to do. I feel like too,
Yeah,
yeah,
I would actually recommend fall sowing for you. Maybe do, half of a batch fall sowing and half of a batch, starting in January, and do those early flowering varieties, and just, see the difference between the two. Because again, if you grow them cold, you should be able to put them outside. And they should be able to do just beautifully. If you get down to single digits, then I would recommend, maybe putting some frost cloth over them, or,
sure.
in the low teens, definitely, but they should do just fine.
Cool. Well, I'm definitely gonna try that. I
Yeah.
okay, so you've inspired me, so I'm gonna give it a go again. So well, one more question on this before we move on. The maturity of the sweet pea before you go ahead and stick it in the cold. Like I know my problem was mine became really leggy, which means I waited too long. And I know, but
Right.
they hardly had any leaves on them. So I was kind of like when is enough? So that's why what stage do you feel good like okay, they're above, they're sprouted, kick them to the curb, get them outside.
So as soon as, like I said, mine are sown in our unheated greenhouse. We kind of have a little germination chamber that my husband created. So
Yeah.
as soon as those little snake heads pop up, they're in the unheated greenhouse. I will plant them out when they probably have about 3 sets of leaves on them. And
Okay.
the beauty part about fall sown sweet peas is that you don't have to pinch your fall sown sweet peas. They'll naturally branch on their own.
Oh.
So that's one of the benefits of fall sowing. If you late winter sow, then you definitely will want to pinch before you plant yours out. So, just the difference in timing, I guess you could say. But if your sweet peas are really long and leggy, 9 times out of 10, it's because they didn't have enough light and they were too warm.
Hmm.
So for sweet peas, you want rugby players. You don't want basketball players. So you want your plants to be short and stocky and beefy. You don't want them long and lean. So again, number one mistake people make when they have long, lanky sweet peas is not enough light, and they're probably too warm. Because sweet peas will just bolt overnight. If they're looking for light, they're going to be like, help, where's the light? But they are really good at telling you what they need. So if, they're leaning away, I always try to tell my students to watch what your sweet peas are doing. If they're leaning to one side, that's where they want to go. That's where the light's at. If they're starting to turn yellow, make sure that you're not bottom watering. A lot of people bottom water their sweet peas. That's another thing you don't want to do. They do not like too much moisture. They're heavy drinkers, but they don't like to be sitting in water too. So just, really paying attention and really looking at what they're telling you, will help you really assess your sweet pea plants better.
Well, I know, just forgive me, listeners, if I'm being too crazy about this, but I also have seen where people will plant their seeds in these really tall pots. And I thought, is that because of transplanting? Like, do they not, do they transplant okay, but do you really have to have well-worked soil? Do they have any issues with root damage when you transplant them, or are they very forgiving because they're rugby players?
So a lot of So a lot of people will use root trainers with sweet pea plants, just because their root systems are so vigorous, just to give them, enough space to grow in those seed trays. I personally have never used root trainers. It's just been a cost thing for us up until this
Sure.
point. So I just use 50 cell trays, and I found that that gives them enough space so that, I mean, they're not root bound by the time I plant them out. It just 72s, it can get dicey. So I just give them a 50, and that's what's worked for us. So root trainers are great. If you've got, if you're not with growing over 30,000 plants, the idea of buying 30,000 root trainers is kind of a little bit daunting on the budget. So
A lot.
I know, yeah. So, we've got the 50 cell trays, and I just continue to use those because it's worked. So, but if you can use root trainers, those are great. So it gives, them more than enough space to be able to spread out and grow and keep those roots growing down.
Okay. Well, I'm glad to get that question answered. How many varieties are you growing with 30,000 plants? How many varieties are
I
you
know,
growing?
137 this year.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That is a lot of varieties.
I'm a
Now,
little, I'm a little obsessed.
yeah, I think you left a long time ago. Well, there's so many, when we think of sweet peas, kind of like some other flowers, you think of England, you think of, what they're growing over there and all these varieties because they have like the perfect climate. And of course,
Yeah.
your climate's very similar to theirs.
Mhm.
Do you find that all sweet peas do well in your area, or because we've got listeners now that are just literally all over the world, so trying to figure out, you've made great suggestions about us down here in the South, but as you get colder, because your climate's a little more temperate, as you get colder though, do you see any advantages to other varieties?
Oh man. I mean, I have a girlfriend, she actually lives in zone 3, and she's able to grow. Yeah. It's a challenge,
I had
but
big
she's
eyes there.
actually, yeah, I know. She's actually able to grow sweet peas beautifully as well. So, because they do like the cool temperatures, but not, -40.
Right.
You just, it's all about the timing. But yeah, we are lucky here in the Pacific Northwest where we, do have an ideal sweet pea growing climate. Very, very similar to England. Very similar
Yeah.
to England. But I don't find where people that I've taught, or other growers that I've talked with that have been in those cooler climates have had issues with any of the different varieties of sweet peas, early or just regular Spencer varieties. Either one has done fine for them.
Well, good. I'm really jealous of all those people that can grow them all. Yes. That's okay though. I'll forgive them.
We're gonna get you there, Scott.
I know. I am determined. I am determined. That's for sure. Okay. So when it comes to sweet peas with all these varieties and now everyone can grow them, I'm just kind of curious. You, you have all these varieties. How do you deal with like cross pollen? I mean, I don't know. I've never bred anything like a sweet pea, so I don't know how that works. I mean, you're not out there bagging these little heads, are you? Are they self pollinate?
No,
I feel like I've had
no.
this conversation with someone else before. I think Bailey Hale and I we've talked about this a little bit, so I'm kind of curious how that works for you.
So sweet peas are what we call selfers. So they do not cross-pollinate, luckily for me. So because that would be a big issue. But yeah, so you don't have to worry about your varieties crossing, even if they're grown, right next to each other. So your seeds from Blue Shift are going to be Blue Shift. Your seeds from Bix are going to be, they're not going to cross with each other. It's a very rare occurrence if you do get a sport, or if one does, I haven't actually experienced any crossing in all my years of growing. So, yeah, so that works well. But for seed production, we like to keep, a space in between the varieties so that, our customers are getting those varieties that, that are listed on the website, right? So things don't intertwine, because as we all know, sweet pea vines can get really crazy and wild, if you kind of let them go to their own devices. So
Yeah.
yeah, but they do not cross.
Well, that makes that easy. And that probably
Yeah.
makes it easy for people to save their seeds too, if they wanted to try to do that.
If you want to save your seeds, sweet peas are a great place to start, because they don't cross. So it's a really great idea. I tell, all my friends and, fellow gardeners too, like, start collecting your sweet pea seeds. They make great gifts, and, you're
Oh, wow.
honestly
Yeah.
making an investment in your next year's garden.
Yeah.
So yeah, save your seeds. Just let the blooms, die off, let those pods form, collect the seeds, and there's next year's sweet pea patch.
There you go. What a great idea. And now, have you dabbled at all in trying to do your own crosses? Have you been that aggressive with that yet? Or are
Maybe.
you, ah, oh,
Maybe.
you heard
Wink,
it here,
wink.
folks. Yeah, you heard it here. So,
I actually went over to England in 2022, and was very fortunate to be able to meet with Roger Parsons. And so he showed me how to, yeah, I know.
name
I was
dropper.
totally fangirling. I know. I know. My first sweet pea of 2022 that I smelt was in Roger Parsons' greenhouse. It was fabulous. But I can't remember which one, because I was so nervous, and he
I
was
get it.
so warm and inviting and just absolutely wonderful. And just took me around and showed me how to hybridize sweet peas. And yeah, they were just absolutely lovely. So yeah, so wink, wink, maybe we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. I see that wink, wink. Okay. I love it.
I
Well,
can't
okay.
divulge all my secrets.
Well, I understand, but at least we can hope there's something exciting coming. Um,
Maybe.
yeah. Well, one thing I wonder, because having had conversations, we mentioned Brenda earlier with pansies and things, like some of these varieties that have been around forever were a lot of them were losing or have already lost.
Yeah.
Is that the same thing with sweet peas? This has been going on for so long.
Yeah. It's really, that's the hard thing right now, is that, getting seed is so difficult, so hard. Everything is either getting confiscated by, customs, or, it's just a really old, antiquated, law. So it's really, really hard. And most of the breeders are over in England. And so being able to get those seeds that, they've been, um, storing
Hoarding.
and
They've been hoarding and
keeping.
keeping to
Yeah, well,
themselves.
I didn't want to say hoarding, but it's just, they have varieties over there that, we haven't seen here in the United States yet. And there's so many lovely varieties. So I'm really trying to build up my seed bank,
I
behind
guess
the
so.
scenes, just because it's heartbreaking to think of all these lovely, beautiful varieties that have been around for hundreds of years, that, there's the potential of them being lost. So yeah,
Mm.
hopefully we can get that to change.
So I know you've mentioned your seed sale. How does that work, and what time of year is that? I know I happened to visit your website and I noticed everything is sold out. So I guess I've missed it for this year. So I'm curious, how does that normally work for those of us who are now inspired?
So we have a seed sale twice a year. So we'll do a smaller sweet pea seed sale in the fall. And then our big seed sale is in January. So we're trying to really make sure that we have those varieties available to those of you that need to fall sow and, that want to overwinter your sweet peas. And then also those people that are wanting to, late winter sow as well. So 2 seed sales a year. You haven't missed it yet. You missed the January one, but another one's coming soon in September, October. We're still working on the details of that because it just really depends on the harvest, which we're kind of in the middle of right now. And then another one in January.
Okay.
And then our tuber sale is in March. So
wow, never a dull moment.
but that's a different subject.
yeah, for sure. So let me ask this question. I know because have been involved with importing sweet peas like from Japan, and they have this crazy stem length, and I know some of that's varieties. In fact, I've heard rumor from a past guest that some people have brought seed in from Japan to try to do some testing to see how they do here. Have you heard anything about this?
I heard, but I have not experienced
Okay.
it yet.
Okay.
I'm seriously jelly of those that were that were chosen for that little project. But the stem length on the Japanese sweet peas is insane. Just so long. It's just absolutely incredible. So yeah, stay tuned on that one because I cannot wait to get my hands on some of those.
Yeah, I have to agree. Well, I happen to know somebody, so I'll see if I can help that out. But so as far as the varieties you're growing, though, I mean, I know some people that have brought me sweet peas this year. That they're beautiful, they're great, but stem length is an issue. What varieties do you think have better stem length?
So the Spencer varieties are known to have longer stem length. So if you're looking for longer stems and you're specifically growing your sweet peas for cut flower production, I would highly recommend the Spencer varieties. There's several that are known for that we carry that have the longest stem length. Spring Sunshine Peach is fabulous as far as stem length goes. Bix has wonderful stem length. Just those two off the top of my head. The Winter Sunshine series, so Winter Sunshine Light Blue, Winter Sunshine Lavender, and Winter Sunshine Opal. Those are absolutely stunning varieties that you would probably write those down, Scott, because those are early flowering and the stem length is incredible on those. So there's certain varieties that you could gear towards for longer stem length, but I also like to recommend, I like to show my sweet peas who's boss in my sweet pea patch, by really keeping them really taut and tight to their netting and to their trellis, because if you let them go all loosey-goosey and wild, they're so beautiful and whimsical and romantic, but at the same time that is when you're going to run into crooked stems, stems that are kind of bent because they're reaching for the light. But if you keep them taut to the trellis and to the netting, they don't have anywhere to grow but up and out, and so they're going to reach and you're going to get longer stem length on them.
Okay, well that makes sense. Because my grower, when they brought them to me, they were very wild and woolly. They were all over the place, which I didn't mind actually, because there was some vine attached to them and stuff, and I didn't mind that. It was kind of cool, but obviously we're trying to grow some real sweet peas, and that's helpful information. How like with these two varieties you mentioned, what can I ask? I don't know, it's going to depend on the grower, the cultivation, all that. But like, what kind of stem length are we talking for those, at least those two that you mentioned?
Oh goodness. So Spring Sunshine Peach gave me a 28-inch stem length last year.
Hello. Okay. That's respectable.
Yeah. Yeah. So it gave me some really good stems. In fact, I mean, I was even blown away. I was like, wow, you go, girl. But so yeah, really good stem length on those guys. Absolutely.
Wow.
But again, that variety is known for its long stems, but in combo with keeping them, up to the netting, I mean, like I said, they don't have anywhere but up and out.
Now, I mean, I know up can be a long way up. So how tall do your sweet peas get?
So right now our vines that are about 10 feet tall. Yeah. 10, I would say 10, maybe 11 feet tall. There comes a point where I just let them go. I mean, anything over 8 feet for me is like cherry on the sundae. So, first year growing sweet peas, I actually didn't realize that harvesting them on an orchard ladder in October wearing a scarf was kind of like an oddity. So my first season, I actually planted a row of sweet peas on the edge of my field, and it got morning sun until about between 1 or 2 in the afternoon, and then it was shaded from the afternoon heat, and they absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved it. And so, like I said, I was on an orchard ladder harvesting them. I think the first year they were at least 11 to 12 feet tall. And I was still harvesting flowers in October.
Oh my
So yeah,
gosh, the
so
October
growing them the
harvesting
right way.
flowers.
I
That's
know, I
that
know.
is just
So
that is
good.
just wrong. That is so wrong. I'm really talking about let's talk about being jelly now. I can't imagine. Okay, so let's talk about fertilizer because I feel like, sometimes I know there's a balance with nitrogen and things like that because you don't want them to just have all vine. You want them to also produce flowers.
Right. Yeah. So sweet peas are really heavy feeders. So we introduce compost at 3 different times throughout the season. So when we're preparing our beds, we will work, compost into the soil just to prepare it while, our seedlings are growing. And then, so that's step one, is just really amending the soil. Well, I like to say the more mushrooms that you see in your sweet pea patch, the better, just because they really do love that organic material. Second time that we introduce compost is actually at planting time. So I call it my sweet pea lasagna. So I dig a hole that's deeper than I know. So I dig a hole that's deeper than what's necessary. I put a little bit of a compost treat in the bottom, cover it with your soil, and then I put the plant on of that soil. And so once those roots get established and they start growing and getting settled into their new homes, they're going to hit that compost treat, and you'll actually, it's really crazy because you can actually see the plant above the surface. You can actually tell when they hit that compost treat, and they're off to the races. So that's the second step. That's kind of one of my key tips for sweet peas. And then the third time that we use compost is we use compost tea on our plants. So
Okay.
starting when they're about a foot tall. Yeah, starting when they're about a foot tall, we'll spray them with compost tea. And sweet peas in general don't like to be sprayed, but we lightly mist our plants with a little bit of compost tea, and we don't do it. We do it about every 2 weeks. And then once we see that they're getting kind of close to being, starting to set bud, we stop. So you do not want to introduce a ton of nitrogen when they're starting to set buds, because you'll lose your whole entire first flush of flowers. So believe me, I've learned the hard way. So again, so compost in the soil, compost at planting time, and then compost tea as well. And they seem to love it. So
Wow. Well, that's great information. I appreciate that.
yeah.
The book. How long did it take you to uh put this work of art out into the world?
Oh my goodness. It's been a labor of love. Let me tell you. I like to say I poured my heart and soul into these pages, but in all reality, it's more like blood, sweat, and tears. um,
I love that.
but I honestly, when I started growing flowers, if you would have asked me at that time, about writing a book or even teaching a class, I would have been like, no way, there's no way. Um, but again, like I said earlier, just where this journey with flowers has taken me has just been really surprising to me at, not just how much I'm getting out of it, but sharing my love of flowers with others has just seeing the response that people are getting by, just sharing what we're doing, but
Mm-hmm.
also, what's going on inside here in me
Mm-hmm.
when I do that. It just, you couldn't pay me enough money to go back to corporate America. Because I absolutely love what I do. And I truly, truly mean that. But Sweet Pea School actually started in, well, the workshop, I should say, started in, what was it, 2020? And
Oh, good
it was
time.
in person. Yeah. Yeah. I know, right? Yeah. So it was right about, it was in COVID. And my first class, we were all masked up, and I was so nervous for the first class because it was the first class. But then COVID went into the mix, and so then we're like, can we do this? Can we not do this? We didn't know. So everybody was masked up, and I taught my first couple workshops, and then I had some students after the class. We were talking, and they were like, "Have you ever thought about writing a book?" And I was like, "No, I haven't thought about writing a book." And they're like, "This would be a fabulous book." And it's almost like they planted that seed in me,
Mm-hmm.
to really push myself out of my comfort zone. And I mean, English was not my favorite class in high school, let's be honest. And the thought really terrified me, to be honest with you. But I was just like, you know what? Let's do it. Let's see. Let's see if, people are hungry for sweet peas. And so I put together a book proposal and met with some publishers and got a book deal, and Sweet Pea School is now a book. So we just announced pre-orders yesterday, so I'm still pretty emotional about it. But yeah, I wanted to be able to reach more people and inspire more people to grow sweet peas. That's my sole purpose in this book, is just to share my passion for these incredible flowers and to get more sweet peas out in the world. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
I want, yeah, I think people have such an emotional connection with these flowers, but people are like, they're sweet peas. I want, they've been grown in gardens for so long, but they need their time to shine. And I hope the book does them justice. So
I'm sure it will. And I feel like you're right. This is a flower that unlike other flowers that kind of fell away, this flower has always been a part of cut flower. I'd say always, but just about always been a part of the cut flower world. And
oh yeah,
yeah, and
so
it's
many
like,
people.
well, I feel like, but it's like, growing up in the South, we get told a lot of things down there, one of which is the things we can't do. And like, we were told, yo, you can't grow dahlias down there, and you can't, of course, now we're all, now we know they lied to us. And so I'm inspired to see this little gem maybe get returned. But I don't know, I feel like it's just such a part of I don't know. It's one of those flowers that really ties gardeners and cut flower people and florists all together, because we all obsess
Yeah.
about it. And I don't know if it's the fabulous color, the wonderful vine, the immense fragrance. So I'm going to ask you this question. This is a really important question now.
Okay.
What do you think sweet peas smell like?
Sweet peas. I wish somebody could replicate it. I mean, it's magical that they can't, because that makes the flower so much more magical. But that smell, there's nothing like it.
I have a
There.
I have a theory.
Okay, what's your theory?
They when we get these huge boxes of sweet peas in, and we have them all together, I think Fruit Loops. I think they smell like Fruit Loops.
That's amazing. Okay, so we have a box of Fruit Loops in our pantry right now. I'm never gonna look at them the same,
No.
Scott.
Oh, I want you to do a smell test, maybe with your husband.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to.
Yeah, yeah, and say, okay.
I honestly, that's my next Instagram post. That'll be for you.
Oh
That's
my
funny.
gosh, and it's so funny.
Honestly,
Yeah,
there's just something about sweet peas. There's just such, I've never seen so much power in one flower.
Hmm.
Just being able to take somebody back to that moment in time in their grandma's garden, or one of the most powerful experiences that I've ever had as a cut flower farmer was actually my first bouquet of sweet peas that I ever sold. And it was to a lady. She had just lost her husband to cancer. And she didn't even say anything. She just reached out and she grabbed him. She buried her nose in them. And we were just both bawling. And sorry, I'm going to start crying. She looked up at me and she's like, "You brought him back to me."
Mm.
And little did I know, her husband had built her a garden and she grew sweet peas. And when he got sick, she couldn't garden anymore because she was taking care of him. And for that split second in time, those
Mm.
flowers that I grew and nurtured in our garden took her back to that moment and to that happy place, to forget, everything that had just happened. And there's just something about sweet peas. And I think that, they're kind of a quintessential garden flower, in my
Yeah.
opinion. They've, everybody kind of, is used to sweet peas. But like I said earlier, I don't feel like they've been given the attention and the love and that they deserve. And so I think that, really kind of fueled my fire to get a beautiful book out there that not only, shares all my tips and tricks for, growing sweet peas and how you can be more successful in growing sweet peas in challenging climates, and, step-by-step instructions for new gardeners, people that have really struggled, that can possibly get, more, more out of them, so to speak, but also floral designers. We go into designing. We also go into my favorite varieties, and just how you can elevate your bouquets and arrangements with just a few, simple stems of sweet peas, and not just sweet peas, but the tendrils. The tendrils are magical
Oh,
in
yeah.
themselves. Using them as a
100%.
foliage. So, but also a beautiful book that, love to put in their floral library. So there were a lot of boxes to check with this book, and I really feel like we did all of that. So I'm really, really proud, and I cannot wait to get it out into the world and see what people think.
Yes. Well, when does it come out officially?
February 25th.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
That's
February
awesome.
25th. So it feels like it's still a long ways away, but to be honest with you, I feel like I just finished the proposal and it's here. So they told me, they're like, it's going to be a 2 to 3 year process. And I was like, what, really? That's a long time, but it's almost here. So it's
Yeah.
gone really, really quickly.
Wow. That's amazing.
So
Well, I'm super
yeah.
excited for you and for all of us, and
Oh, thank
being,
you.
yeah, to be able to learn. I'm curious. Are you still doing your your course, your in person course or Zoom course? Do you still do that?
Yeah, so Sweet Pea School, the course, we've had to differentiate so there's no confusion
The
between the
movie.
book and the course.
Uh,
Yeah, so I do it twice a year. So we do it once in the fall, and then we do it again in early January, so that we can, get both the people that need to fall sow and also the late winter sowing. So our fall sowing class is on September 28th. So tickets are available on our website for that. It's via Zoom, so no matter where you are in the world, you can attend. We've had people from 26 different countries attend Sweet Pea School, so
yeah,
that's
that's
been,
cool.
yeah, really exciting. Yeah, it's been really cool, especially to see, the people from Australia that are getting up at 2 and 3 in the morning the next day to attend. That's been a lot of fun. And then we haven't set our January date yet. So, but yeah, we do it twice a year, and it's been a lot of fun.
So, is it live or is it recorded?
It's live.
Okay.
It's live. Yeah. And it's usually 2.5 to 3 hours long. So I'm given a ton of information about sweet peas, but also I love the live interaction, with people and being able to really answer their questions. And, I really want them to walk away from this class feeling like, I mean, I am there with them every step of the way. If they have questions about their sweet peas, or if they're struggling with their sweet peas, I am there to support them. It's so much more than just a workshop. Like I said, I just want people to be successful growing their sweet peas. So this isn't like, take my workshop and then, you're kind of off on your own. This is, I'm with them every step of the way. So.
I love that. That's great. I think that a lot of times, when you're taking courses, and there's value in all of it, but having that personal touch, I think is really
Mhm.
comfortable. I know I saw this one. I want to say it was a review, I think, of your course, and I was like, I was pretty impressed. It somebody that I guess had at the time had been growing sweet peas for 15 years or something like that. You probably know what I want to say, but they had been growing for 15 years, and after taking your course, they still learned so much. They, that improved their growing, and you just think, wow. I mean, that's saying something.
Yeah, I love hearing stories like that they've been growing them for a really long time, but they notice a difference or they tried something new, or something that they hadn't tried before. And just, learning every day, you're learning something different. So it's been a lot of fun, new growers, experienced growers, people that have been super frustrated and on sweet peas, give them another shot. So it's been a lot of fun for me to be able to just, share everything that I know and have learned along the way, and saving people from making the same mistakes that I did. But yeah, just so there's nothing more magical than holding a bouquet of sweet peas. And I want everyone to be able to experience that.
Yeah, no, I do too. I think that's really great, and then we can hear from everybody what they think they smell like, so that way we can
Yeah,
develop a
I want to
consensus.
see, like, is it Fruit Loops or is it not?
That real natural source of fragrance. Yeah, that's it. Um,
I can already see the picture right now, Scott. A bowl of Fruit Loops and a bouquet of sweet peas right next to each other. Which one is it?
Blind taste, well, not a taste test, but smell test.
Yeah, don't
Yes.
taste them.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so out of 137 varieties, I think, is that what you said? Crazy number.
Yeah.
How many do you
Yeah.
actually sell?
I mean, it really depends on the harvest. So
Okay.
for our, yeah, so for our fall seed sale, um, it'll be kind of a pared down version, just because, we're just trying to get as many as we possibly can in, just so that we can actually have that sale. But we will need a little bit more time to get our full library in. But oh goodness, last year it was over 60 varieties that we had for sale.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
So
Is there anywhere else you can get 60 varieties of sweet peas in the
oh
States?
yeah,
Really?
yes,
That's okay.
yes. But yeah, I just every year I grow more and more and more and fall more in love with them. And yeah, the obsession continues.
I identify. I can appreciate that. I always like to wrap up our episodes with an advice question. And so, having been through what you've been through with figuring this out, finding a business model that works for you, I'm just kind of curious, like, what piece of advice you'd like to leave our listeners?
Well, I think in the beginning, as a new grower, you want to try all the things. You want to grow all the flowers, you want to do all the things. And, my advice is, to start small and do, you know, figure out, what works for you. Do you have small kids? Do you need, are you going to need to figure out, a family balance? That's been a
Right.
huge struggle for us, is, that balance between, not letting the business take over our family life as well. But yeah, just starting small, figuring out, what you love, what brings you joy, and, working that into your business model. Because I think if you love what you do, it shines through with what you're doing. Um, I'm absolutely obsessed with the sweet peas and dahlias, and that's kind of what we've become known for. So what is your niche? What brings you joy?
Hmm.
And that'll translate, to your customers and into what you're doing. Um, it's just you get an energy from that. And I every flower that I'm absolutely love. And so I got to a point where I was just like, okay, I don't have to grow that. I can grow this. What is selling, what isn't selling, and just really, fine tuning things as you go. Um, but yeah, starting small and just figuring out what works for you, what works for your family, and what brings you joy.
Hmm. I love that. The one thing too, I'm going to ask to follow up on that is you didn't have all the answers at the beginning. You didn't
Mm-mm.
like you love sweet peas because you planted them, but
Right.
you went through a process, and I feel like sometimes people feel this pressure to like have to have all the answers right up front when they start, either because of limited resources, limited time, limited space, whatever the reason is, they feel pressure. um I'm just curious if you have any thoughts on that.
Social media plays a huge part in that, because everybody's putting face forward, right? And we're not showing, myself included, all of the, things that are happening behind the scenes and all the plants that we're killing in the process.
Right.
I mean, you're going to kill plants. I mean, you're going to, have seed trays that, don't get watered, or, something, there's aphid pressure, whatever it is. I think it's easy to focus on, the hard things, right? But yeah, don't get caught in what everybody else is doing. Just really like what brings you joy. And um you know there's so many failures that happen along the way. Just don't let it get you down. Just keep going, keep putting one foot in front of the other. And there's been times where I'm just like, why am I why am I doing this? Why
Right.
am I beating myself up over this? And and then there's those moments that I'm just like, that's why I'm doing this. That
Yes.
is why. It's the garden club that has 30 women that came to our farm that are all over the age of 65 to 70, and watching them walk through the sweet peas. That was the right. Yes. Okay. That honestly, I couldn't, my lip was quivering the whole entire time, because these women
Mhm.
were just so enamored with the sweet peas. And like some of them just couldn't even talk. And so to be able to know how hard we're working behind the scenes, but to give somebody that experience, whether it's in our garden or in their own gardens, yeah, it's just, I can't put it into words, and I can't put a price on it.
Yeah. It's like
It's it's the best feeling in the world.
yeah. It's interesting. I know I was having a conversation earlier today with my wife, and we were just talking about people who give a lot and do a lot. It's like we have this. I'm just going to call it like a love tank almost, and sometimes those tanks get really, really empty. But it's moments like that that really fill it back up, because you know you're you're changing people's lives at that point, and we forget that this is possible with what we do. um
Right.
because we see the weeds, or we see the bugs, or we see the tool that didn't get picked up, or whatever it is. But when these people come in to your property and into your life, they you make a difference. And I think that's it's just so fabulous, and I just really appreciate you sharing that story. So
Well, thank
well,
you.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say, Marryn, thank you, Marryn. I said it wrong. Marryn, thank you so much for being on the Flower Podcast.
Thank you
I've
so much for
enjoyed
having
this.
me.
I can't wait for the book to come out, and I can't wait to try some seed this year. So thank you.
We're gonna hook you up, Scott. We're gonna hook you up with some early flowering varieties.
Amen. I'm excited about that. Yay.